This is an in-depth review of the brand new Pioneer DJ DDJ-FLX10 flagship Pro DJ controller. It's for Rekordbox as well as for Serato. It replaces both the DDJ-1000 and the DDJ-1000SRT, which were the Rekordbox and the Serato variants of the previous controller. It's got stems as a huge addition, which is controlled using new stems functions and also new stems effects, which are unique to this unit. Stems being something that lets you separate the parts of a track, the vocals, the drums and the melody, in order to mix with them separately, do live mashups, and as we're going to see, add effects to them and so on. So that's a big thing. It's a big thing in the software that's been added as of Rekordbox 6.7.0, and we've got a separate video on that. But it's also the first controller in the Rekordbox range to have dedicated controls throughout for stems. So we're going to look in detail at that in this review. Also has another new feature called Mix Point Link, and Mix Point Link is a way of semi-automating your mixes using cue points, which is an interesting one. So again, we're going to look at that. So these features are primarily for Rekordbox. This is primarily a Rekordbox controller, even though it also works with Serato. So they're not replacing the DDJ-1000SRT for Serato. It's just the one controller. We're going to concentrate mainly on Rekordbox here, but I will talk to you about how it works with Serato throughout and give you my thoughts on Serato towards the end. We'll take a look at a Serato configuration utility that helps you get it set up for that as well. So Serato users, we've got you covered too. Now it's got new jogwheel displays, which are far improved on the jogwheel displays from the previous unit. They can be reconfigured in different ways. You can have your artwork on them and so on. So I'm going to talk you through how those work a little bit later on as well. One thing you can't see just by looking at the unit is the fact that Pioneer DJ tells us the sound quality has been improved throughout with better chips, better digital to analog conversion, and really importantly, better phono preamps. So they tell us. We haven't had time because we've only had this for a few hours to plug in our turntables and check, but we've been told the phono preamps have been improved, which is a good thing because that was a bugbear from the previous unit. So what we've got here is a replacement for flagship DDJ-1000 controllers. It's got the same club look and feel of the DDJ-1000 units. It's got the same full-size jogs. It's got the same 4 channels, same standalone capability around the back, so you can plug in your decks and plug in your CDJs and so on. Same dual USBs around the back. The same hardware effects, which is good because it means you can use them with anything you've got plugged in. You don't need to use them with software. And of course, this also apes the look of a club mixer. That's one of the big things about this layout, that it looks like club gear. It's also got DVS, which means that you can plug in your turntables and control them using Rekordbox or Serato if you upgrade. We'll talk more about that a little bit later on. Also has a Magvel fader, which has been improved. It certainly feels very nice to me. So a lot to look at here. We're going to concentrate on the stems to start with after we've had a quick tour of the unit, because that's the big new thing both in the hardware and software. So before we look at stems and then move on to Mix Point Link and then move on to talk about some other features of this, let's have a quick tour of the unit. So the decks are identical. They're not mirror imaged or anything, so this has been the way for a long time, and they are very similar in feel to using club gear. The layout's a bit different to club gear because on club gear you don't have the pads at the bottom, they're across the top here, and you don't have any of this cool software stems stuff either. But ultimately these feel like using club jog wheels. You've got a jog feel light and heavy adjuster here to make them spin back very loosely or very tight, so it's up to you to set this how you want, and that's actually mechanical. You can feel it doing something underneath the jog wheel there. So at the top we've got the new stems control. These are new. We've also got the new Mix Point Link controls, but a lot of this stuff is familiar to both people who've used club gear and also people who've used the original DDJ-1000. So you've got your selector here for choosing the tracks in your library. You've got your in and out loop, which is this classic Pioneer way of doing auto and manual looping here. You've got your old-fashioned memory cue settings here, which is on pretty much all Pioneer gear. We've got reverse and slip reverse, deck select, because you can control 2 decks with each of these. That's why you've got 4 channels here. You've got quantized slip, vinyl mode, and then down at the bottom here, beat jump and the shift button, which controls an awful lot of extra functions, because anything written underneath the buttons is controlled by the shift function. So those things here written in black on a white background are always controlled by shift. So whenever you see that, holding down shift will get that to work. We've got the pads here with the 8 pad modes. These are labeled up for Rekordbox, not for Serato. It's one of the downsides here with the Serato use is that the pads don't correlate with what actually happens in Serato, so there's a bit of learning there. And then key sync and key reset, tempo range, tempo reset, and your beat sync button here. So moving on to the mixer section, they are the full gamut of sound color effects that you find on a Pro setup. So you've got 6 sound color effects here: noise, filter, crush, pitch, space, and dub echo. We'll take a quick look at these in conjunction with the FX part select, which is the new thing, in a little while. We've also got 2 microphone inputs, and the microphone inputs have levels and EQ here with a talk over. The sampler Q here goes alongside the other Q buttons for putting these things into your headphones, and then the headphones volumes, both for the balance between the Q and master and the level volume is here. There's a sampler volume there as well. So the channels here are pretty standard. You've got your selectors at the top with your A and B for the 2 laptops that you can plug into the 2 sound cards on the unit. You've got 4 line inputs and 2 phono inputs, 3 band EQ switchable to the stems, which is really cool. We'll look at that in a bit. Here are your color effects, which are per channel, which are filter or any of the other 5 that you choose. And then down here we've got our select for the crossfader. Magvel crossfader feels great, as I said, and you can select to turn the crossfader off or select the channels to left or right crossfader down here. So this is where you get your master output and your effects, very similar to a club standard mixer here. So the big button here for turning the effect on and off, your depth button for the effect, your selector for the effect, all the different effects. No change here from the DDJ-1000. They all sound excellent. Small display to show you what's going on with them. The beat cycle for the effects here, you can also set this to tap with the shift button to tap in the speed of the track if it's got it a bit wrong or you just want to use it for creative effect. We'll look at this in a minute because it's cool. A cue for the master as well, and then your master outputs, you've also got your VU meters per channel here, and then your booth and master levels here. So around the front, nothing to show you really. We've just got 2 headphone sockets, 1/4 and 1/8 inch, but around the back there are a few bits and pieces to talk through. So what we've got down here is, starting over here on the left hand side, our outputs here are for the booth and the master, and your booth output is the TRS. Your master output is balanced and unbalanced XLR and RCAs here. This is a ground terminal for connecting Technics turntables to in order to earth them. And then here's our 4 external inputs. It does work as a full external mixer, including the effects we just looked at. And you've got 4 line inputs and 2 phono inputs there, switchable. This is really interesting. The unit is now a DMX Lighting control unit as well. I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that soon, but that is very curious and also potentially really useful, especially for mobile DJs. Here are our 2 USBs, A and B. They're USB-Cs now as well, and that means that you will need an adapter cable if you're used to using a USB-A to USB-B, but they will work with any computer. It's just that this end of your cable has to be a USB-C. 2 microphone inputs, a TRS and an XLR combo input there, and this is your power on off, and your power input is unfortunately a power brick. They haven't put an IEC kettle style cable on there, just the same as with the DDJ-1000, something that I would like to have seen just to make it easier for plugging in and not having to rely upon a proprietary power brick. But there you go. So that's a look around the unit. Let's have a listen to it. And I'm going to start, of course, with stems. That's the main thing I want to demo here because it's what's new. So stems is a little bit different to how it's done on other systems. So Serato is the main kind of competitor for stems. On Serato, your stems are controlled on pads down here, and you have a pad for each of the 4 stems that Serato uses: drums, vocals, bass line, and melody. Now on this unit, it is controlled by these buttons up here, which are at the top left of each of the decks. And you have 3 stems: drums, vocals, and instruments instead of 4. And so these are new dedicated buttons. Now you can map these if you've got a controller that isn't this one, which I've shown you in a separate video linked underneath. We're going to demo, of course, using these buttons here, and just pressing them turns the individual stem on and off in that track. When you load a track, it takes a few seconds, it's literally like just 2 or 3 seconds, for the track to kind of enable. The track will start playing instantly, but it takes a few seconds before these buttons work. But then once the track has analyzed in the background, you can immediately start using these in the way I'm about to show you. So, as you can hear, we've got drums, instruments and vocals going on in this track. So let's start playing with them. Let's turn the drums off for kind of an instant breakdown. Let's take out the vocals. Maybe we'll just have the vocals and the drums. So you can hear instantly how this is going to be fun. Stems are the current battleground in DJ software to give DJs a way of providing new mix techniques, new mashups. You can have the instruments from one and the vocals from another and so on. It's just a totally new way of mixing. It's pretty damn cool. But there's more to it than this, and the big selling factor of this unit is the fact that it's got extra ways of using stems rather than just turning them on and off up here. So let's start to look at those. The first one is that you can switch out the EQs so that instead of having low, mid and high, so currently, my EQs are low, mid and high, right? Standard stuff. You can switch these out to control the drums, the vocals and the instruments, just the same as you're switching them on and off here. You can actually have volume controls for them here. So the way you do that is by pressing Shift and pressing the Q button, which is one of those shift functions I was telling you about. And now these are going to turn the drums, vocals and instruments up and down for that track. Just giving you more control. Now notice how the Q light is flashing when I'm turning this. This is to tell you that you're in this mode, so you don't get confused and accidentally leave this mode on and think, why aren't my EQs working? If you are not in this mode, the Q won't flash when you're turning them because we're back to normal EQs. So it's just a fail-safe. So we've looked at turning the stems on and off and also altering their volume. What about the effects? It's a really cool extra feature here, and it's all controlled using this simple Simon-like little control circle here. This turns on and off the effects to each of the stems across both the sound color effects and the beat effects. So let's hit the music. Currently playing the whole song. If I were to turn on filter, it would ordinarily filter the whole track, right? However, if I select, for instance, the drums and instruments by turning off the vocals, now this is telling the effects that it only is to apply the effect to the drums and the instruments and leave the vocal as it is. And of course I could do the same on all the other sound color effects as well. I could put space effect on just the vocal by going like this. Now it works down here as well. So we've got all our transform, reverb, spiral, Mobius, flanger, phaser. They can all be applied on just your choice here. So again, let's say I wanted to apply the transform effect. Now normally, if I was to apply transform to the track, it's going to do the whole track, but I can put that on just the vocals. And then by combining this with turning things on and off, I can really start to mash the track up. And again, I've got all the other effects to choose from here. I could put reverb on just the vocal. Do note that you can't choose whether it goes to the sound color effects or to the beat effects independently. When you turn this on, it's going to affect everything. So you can't have, for instance, the filter going over here on a different track and down here have the effects part select on just the vocals, because it's going to be an all or nothing with this control. So another cool thing that they've added here is the ability to use instant doubles on just a part. So instant doubles is one of those things that has been on DJ gear for a while. You double tap a track and it will immediately take that track and put it onto the other deck. So typically you'd put it onto the spare deck on the left or the right, although you can go up or down to the extra decks on the same side. And this is very commonly used by performance DJs because it'll give them a copy of the same track playing on the other deck, the same time, the same tempo, the same everything. So you can then start scratching, cutting between the two, changing the EQs and the effects and so on. And here they've added something which they call part instant doubles. And so part instant doubles allows you to take a part from this track, like the vocal or the drums or the instruments, and immediately throw it onto this deck and then have that playing at the same tempo, the same place in the track, and so on. So as long as the deck's EQs and stuff are all set the same, then you won't notice a difference when you do that, but suddenly you can control, like for instance, scratch the vocal, or indeed apply different effects to it, and that way you're affecting it in a different way, maybe giving you more control. It's one of those things that's just really easy to show you, quite hard to explain. So let's do it. Let's start this playing. Now if you look at the settings here, you'll see that I've got everything set the same. All my EQs are normal, my trims are the same, and my volumes are the same. My crossfade is in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the shift button and I'm going to double tap vocal here. And what that's telling it to do is take the vocal from here and put it onto this deck and start this deck playing. So you won't hear any difference. No difference, right? But did you notice that this has started playing? And also, you might have noticed that the vocal is now turned off here and turned on here. It's a bit hard to see under the studio lights, but we now have the vocal playing on this deck, and on this deck, we've got the instrumental playing. In other words, the drums and the instruments without the vocal. And that happened just with a double tap on this. You can actually see it on the waveforms. You can see the top loop is the instruments and the bottom loop, you can see it's a different type of waveform, it's just the vocal. So this is cool because it means that I could now apply the filters to just the vocal or just the instruments in a different way. So filter now. Kind of another way of doing what I was doing earlier, but it gives you more possibilities with the effects because they're totally independent now. This is only on this deck. But more importantly, I can grab this and scratch with it. So this is a really cool way of giving you even more control, which brings it pretty close, if not exactly the same as the Rain 4 for Serato, another performance-oriented stems controller. Speaking of Serato then, the audio quality of the stems here is not quite as good as with Serato software. Pioneer DJs engineers tell us that they've deliberately made a trade-off between the quality of the audio and how quickly the tracks load and play. It's a lot simpler with no preparation necessary to get tracks loaded and playing on most laptops using this, and the trade-off is audio quality. Over time, of course, as laptops become more powerful, as they refine the algorithms, things are only going to improve. I think it's pretty usable as it is now. So I wanted to take a further look at the Jogwheels, because that's another area where they've improved. They've not only improved the in-jog displays, but also the colors that you can see on the Jogwheels to help you know what you're doing and what parts you're affecting when you're DJing. So let's take a look at that. The current Jogwheel displays how we've had it set so far in this tutorial, which is showing you an awful lot of information. It's an improvement over the one on the DDJ-1000 immediately. So we've got our main waveform through the middle here, we've got our time elapsed or time remaining, we've got our beat sync and our master to tell us whether the sync is on and whether it's the master deck. We've also got key, BPM, how we're set with the tempo fader, whether the tempo is up or down, and you can see those things changing on the screen as I do that. Also, the key is changing there on this left-hand side, which is pretty cool because we haven't got our master tempo on, so it's showing you the new key as we move the track up or down. And the artwork at the top as well, which is pretty nice. Also, the deck number that we're on. If I was to switch deck here by pressing the deck select button, then it will tell us that we're currently on the other deck. So this is all improved over the DDJ-1000, but pretty standard. However, there's other modes here. So if I hold down the shift button and press the page button here like this, then I get another view which is showing me the parallel waveforms, which is a new thing. So I can see the two tracks that are playing together on here. So again, it's going to save you potentially looking at the deck, and you can also see I've got my loop here on this deck telling me that that one is the one that's currently looped out of the two. Now I can continue to press that shift button and the page button here to go through some other modes. This one is showing us the artwork that's associated with the track, and this mode here is currently showing the Rekordbox logo, but there's a little utility that lets you put your own DJ logo on there, so you can have the decks showing your name, which is pretty cool. And if I'd had more than a few hours with this controller, I'd have taken the time to put the Digital DJ Tips logo on there, but all in good time. So there's other things you can do here as well. So for instance, you can hold down this button here and it will give you this mode here that shows you any particular hot cues that you might have set. So if I set a couple of hot cues here now, you'll see that they're showing on the screen. And so it's just another way of seeing the times, for instance, of your hot cues there, or the names, without having to look at the main screen. And we can turn on or off this track marker here that shows us where we are on the track by double tapping on the shift button. That's now gone from there and it's not showing. Now another thing here is that the ring will change depending upon the deck that we've got selected and the set of drums, vocals or instrumentals that are selected. You can see that I've got drums here, blue, which is showing blue on the ring. If I were to select vocals, it will show green on the ring, and if I were to select instrument, it will show red on the ring. And this is to give you an indication of what this deck is currently playing. And if you combine them, you get a mix of the colors, which is not quite so easy to see, but you do get like red and green mix if you've got vocal and instrumental selected there as well. And you can change this. You can alter this to be how you want. If it's not how you like it now, have them whatever color you like, maybe just to suit the look and feel of your DJ setup. So we need to look at mix point select. This is the kind of head scratching feature. You might think this is great, you might think what the hell. Either way, I'll demo it to you now and you can decide. There's always one feature that you think, really? I remember on the Flex 6, this really weird scratch feature that just I couldn't get it. I don't think anyone could. However, this one is possibly more useful. Let's have a look at it and you can make your own mind up. So the idea here is that we use these buttons here to tell the software that when the currently playing track reaches a cue point of our choice, you are to start playing the new track without the DJ doing anything. It'll just happen. And the idea here is that that frees your hands up to be doing all the other cool stuff that we've seen on the controller. So let's do that. Let's start a track playing here. Now this track here, look on the screen, has got a cue point here at B. And let's say I want to start the new track playing from cue point A there. So I'm going to press cue point A on the new track. That's telling it that's where I want it to start from. And I'm going to use the mix point select to choose the mix point on the new track. You see I'm moving around the mix points there, and this is set to B, and I'll press link. So now it's going to mix them both together. Put the faders up and watch. My hands are away from the mixer now, but when it reaches B, here. You see that? They're now both playing, and I didn't touch it. And this is a way of automating then the mixing in at a set cue point, just, you know, a few seconds, a minute or two ahead of time. You need to do it on the opposite deck. So the opposite deck is the one that you select the cue points on the currently playing deck, which is a bit weird. And also on the in-jog displays, you can set this parallel waveform and it will show you what's going to happen. So this is another way of keeping an eye on it. As I say, it's one of those things that you're either going to get or you're not going to get, but it's pretty cool. We've only used it a couple of times here. We kind of get it. You can turn it off by pressing the shift button and pressing exit there. So it's something to play with. If you own lights, this is something to play with as well. This DMX socket is utterly unique on this controller. I can't think of any other DJ controller with a DMX socket on it. This plugs into your first light, and then your other lights will plug into the first light from there, daisy chaining on. So basically you only have one lead from your controller to your lighting system, and you can then control your lights directly from Rekordbox. On the screen then, did you notice these weird little things at the bottom here? They look like lights in a DJ booth, and they are lights. These are actually a representation of a light show that will play when you play that track. This is called Rekordbox Lighting mode, and it's something that's been built into Rekordbox for quite a long time, and it's kind of been underused. There was a box, a DMX Lighting box that Rekordbox worked with, a little box that you plugged into your laptop and let you do all this stuff. They don't make that anymore. The only way of using this Rekordbox Lighting that you're seeing on the screen here is by the DMX socket on the back of this unit. It's literally the only way of doing it now, using this socket in any equipment from Pioneer DJ. So you're gonna have to assume they're gonna start building this into other equipment as well. But the idea is that instead of plugging in an extra box and having an extra control box as well, that you need to actually control the lighting, because here's a lighting control box. You have this sat next to your DJ controller, and you have this plugged into your laptop. You'd have an extra box controlling the lights. You'd have leads everywhere. Instead of having all of that, you just plug one lead into this socket here, and then using that socket and the pads on your DJ controller, you set it into lighting mode, and the pads will let you control the lights. And what you see on the screen there in this area here for each deck is what you're going to get. Now there's ways of altering this, because you can change the colors and the strobe and all that kind of thing, but it all happens from the DJ controller. Now it's still quite limited. One of the complaints about Rekordbox's lighting mode was that it was pretty limited. It's kind of designed to let you do this on your own. So if you're a mobile DJ with just one or two lighting units, you can quickly turn them on and off, use the strobe, change the color, but also have an auto program running that's decided for you by your software, which is what you can see here, without the need for any extra equipment, any extra interfaces, any extra control hardware, or loads and loads of leads plugging everything together. It's literally one lead out of the back of your DJ controller. So that's what that's all about. If enough people ask about that in the comments underneath, we will set up some lights and make a video explaining how that works in more detail. But it's cool, it's unusual, and indeed it's unique to this unit. So this is Serato, and Serato works absolutely fine with this unit. In most ways, they've done a really, really good job of it. So for instance, your stems work exactly the same way. Not only can you use the mixer in the same way, but you can isolate the instruments, the vocals and the drums as I've shown you. You can use the same stems effects across the sound color effects, and down here you can use instant doubles in exactly the same way I've shown you. And actually I think in the Serato software it all looks a little bit nicer the way stems works. The way it cuts in and out of the various elements just appears a little bit slicker to me, and of course it does sound a little bit better, as we've already talked about as well. So if you're a Serato stems user already, correctly, there'll be no problem using that here. Apart from the fact that you are using the 3 instead of 4 stems on the unit that Rekordbox has decided to use for the way it implements them. That's probably a good thing because it means that the controls just work in this way that Pioneer DJ has chosen, which you might prefer. However, if you prefer to do it the Serato way, if you'd like to use it the way you've always done it in Serato, you can head into Serato settings and you can replace one of the pad modes, the loop roll mode or the sampler mode, down here on these pads, and then have Serato's stems working in exactly the same way that they work on, say, the Rain 4, where you've got the 4 stems here and 4 effects here. So the choice is yours on that one. Now, there are some things in Serato which don't show in your Serato settings that you might want to change. So there's a utility to do that that comes with the DDJ-FLX10. You open the setting utility, which is a separate piece of software, select Serato, and then you've got things like your slip mode behavior, fader start, jog ring color, time mode, virtual deck mode, and whether the record out has the microphone or not. All things that you can set in the settings in Rekordbox, but you can't set in the settings in Serato for this unit, which is why they are there. Speaking of the jogs, you only get the one view on the jogs, you don't get the parallel waveforms view, and also you don't get a mix point. These controls just control pitch and time and manual key moving up and down. And finally, the pads are labeled for Rekordbox, not for Serato, so you'll have to learn the pad modes by rote. The writing on the pads here is wrong. You do get the heads-up display for whichever mode you're in on the pads, which is pretty cool as well. So good job, Pioneer DJs, engineers on the Serato implementation. 8 out of 10 on that one. Right, let's sum up because this has been a long review. What did we like? What didn't we like? Is it for you? Isn't it for you? What are the alternatives to this controller if it's not quite right for you? We'll cover all of that now in this end piece. So look, this is a great unit if you like the idea of using stems. The way they've done it is nice and simple, but it's also nice and creative with the ability to alter the volume of them on the channels and to alter the individual stems with the effects without affecting any of the others. We love the fact that stems instant doubles works the way it works. You can also work up and down the decks as well as left and right, and all of that is creative, but it doesn't really add complexity. Once you know how to use it, it's just pretty simple. You know, this controller improves pretty much in all areas on the DDJ-1000 and 1000 SRT that came before it, and it was a gamble, I guess, combining Serato and Rekordbox in one unit. I think by and large they've pulled that off. The displays are really very nice. They've done a good job of these, and the new modes are certainly to be welcomed. Putting your DJ logo on there is always a cool idea, of course, but having parallel waveforms is definitely a new thing that we thoroughly approve of. We think that having lighting is really interesting, yet to play about with the lighting, but I think that might end up being something that a lot of mobile DJs really like. So what didn't we like about it? The audio quality of the stems is not perfect. It's certainly not best in class right now. And there's no manual key shift. I just showed you a second ago on Serato how that you can use these controls here, because you don't get a mix point link on Serato, to move the key up and down. There's no manual key shift. Now, Rekordbox does use what we call fuzzy key mixing, which is a far better way of getting the track's keys to match when you hit key sync. It's frankly useless the way it works in Serato and all other DJ software at the moment, apart from algorithms. DJ Pro AI, which also uses what we call fuzzy key mixing. So Rekordbox's key sync feature will probably mean that a lot of the time you don't need to move the key up and down manually, but it's a good creative tool anyway. And I couldn't see anyway any way of doing that in Rekordbox. You can do it in Serato, as I said, using the mix point link buttons. So that was a bit of a curious thing that we thought was missing. Is it for you? Well, if you want a future-proofed Pioneer DJ flagship controller, then this one is definitely it. If you're looking to upgrade from the Flex 4 or the Flex 6, then this is definitely it. It's refined, it's high performance. For open format DJing, it really is the bomb. However, it is not a bargain. By our reckoning, it's about $500 more than the DDJ-1000 and the DDJ-1000SRT that came before it. That's almost a 50% price hike, which is a lot of money. And if you don't need all of the extra features on here, if you're not going to use this, if this isn't for you, if you're not going to plug lights in, then it probably isn't for you. It's probably worth considering the DDJ-1000 or the DDJ-1000SRT in that case, because they're probably a lot cheaper now than they were a week ago. At the time of recording this is brand new, but they'll probably do everything that you need. What else should you consider then? Well, you should look at the Pioneer DJ XDJ, XZ or XZ if you want even more club standard features like the ability to plug in extra decks for ProLink and stuff. And that works brilliantly with Rekordbox. I'm pretty sure it works with Serato as well. Don't quote me on that. I haven't got time to check right now. But anyway, the XDJ, XZ or XZ is a great unit with the added bonus of having the ability to DJ in a rather limited fashion, but nonetheless without using a laptop at all. So if you want that kind of flexibility, that might be the one to go for. Of course, the Rain 4 is one to look at, because the Rain 4, we've got our Rain 4 over here on the secondary desk at the moment, is the Serato controller to beat, because this has been designed for Serato. It's got stems features which are all fitting perfectly with the software, and in a lot of ways, if you're a Serato user, this could be the one to go for over the one we've just spent the last half hour looking at. Although again, you might have a decision to make, because this is a more universal unit. So XDJ, XZ, Rain 4, or the DDJ-1000 or SRT, if you don't need all of the features on here, might be other ones that you would look at. But ultimately, this is the new benchmark by which DJ controllers will be judged for the next half decade, just like the DDJ-1000 and the 1000 SRT were for the previous half decade. Pioneer DJ has wisely not messed with the winning formula, but the stuff it's added by and large is meaningful, it's fun, and in other ways that you can't see, for instance the audio quality, this unit's also been upgraded. It's fantastic. It's a great controller, but it ain't cheap. Just make sure you think you're going to use all the features before shelling out this kind of money on a DJ controller, which ultimately is just that. It's just a controller. You still need a decent laptop to use all the features smoothly and properly. If you've enjoyed this review, remember we are Digital DJ Tips, the world's leading online DJ school. We have got an awful lot of training on units like this, guides, tutorials, mixes, and we've also got the biggest number of DJ courses of any school out there to help you become a better DJ. But the first step, before you start thinking about learning to DJ with us, before you start looking at our lessons from Jazzy Jeff and Layback Luke and DJ Angelo and all our other tutors, is just to become a member. If you're not a member already, joining Digital DJ Tips gets you a free copy of our Amazon best-selling book on how to DJ, rock the dance floor, but also, more importantly, it gets you our weekly newsletter called Tuesday Tips, which is where we give you our latest tutorials, reviews, features, news, and more from the world of DJing to help you become a better DJ. That's all free, and so to join, click the link underneath or go to digitaldjtips.com/join. And I look forward to seeing you again in another review very soon. Until then, get good, get out there, and make the moments.